And she went nuts.
Yeah, slightly nuts.
My thing about vegans is they tend to be permanently hangry. Like the lack of meat in their diet makes them very intolerant of people. And they get very agitated.
To be honest, I think they're just missing a really good burger.
Sorry, how long have you been a vegan?
10 years.
Right, because you seem quite agitated to me. You represent what I feel about vegans. You're all quite hangry.
Are you against animal cruelty, Piers?
Yes.
There's a strange correlation that they have between eating meat and death and murder. Look, I'm 100% against animal cruelty. Look, I'm 100% against animal cruelty.
Gaslighting is the main tool that allows abuse and violence to continue in secrecy. Gaslighting is when the perpetrator mentally manipulates the victim into thinking what's happening is not happening, or at least tries to do that. It can also include projecting onto the victim that the victim is in fact the one doing what in reality the perpetrator is doing. It also obviously involves secrecy and doing things behind closed doors, often threatening the victims if they dare tell anyone outside of the closed doors or speak publicly. It can also include, and often does, making the victim believe that they are crazy, telling them they're crazy, telling other people that they're crazy, and that they cannot correctly perceive reality and cannot trust their perception of reality. It's called abuse of perception of reality. And even if they can't successfully do it to you, they'll have kind of like a smear campaign based on lies to get everyone else to perceive you as crazy or faulted or the one that's really doing the bad thing. Let me clarify, obviously the animals are the main victim of the situation, but in the case of Tosh Peterson, which was just shown, she was a victim of assault, and the gaslighting is still done to activists because we advocate on behalf of the victims. Really quick, if you're not vegan, watch the documentary Dominion, free on YouTube. Meat, dairy, and eggs and seafood are all unnecessary violence. The standard industry practices of these industries include the killing of baby male cows right after they are born and taken away from their mothers in the dairy industry, the grinding up alive of baby male chicks in the egg industry, and the gassing with carbon dioxide gas chambers of pigs where they burn and scream from the inside out, and so much more. I hope most animal rights activists and other kinds of activists by now understand the basic stuff about gaslighting I just went over, but there's a more subtle, more unconscious side effect of gaslighting going on, and that's when activists misdirect their frustration and anger at the people refusing to go vegan and the direct perpetrators of the violence onto each other and misblame each other for not being perfect enough activists as the reason why these perpetrators are doing what they do and as the reason why people don't go vegan. The perpetrators, as well as the people who refuse to go vegan, are so good at gaslighting and refusing to be rational, refusing to have empathy, and refusing to even consider the realm of possibility of taking any personal responsibility for their own actions or even admitting the reality of their own actions, that they basically have a wall around them, making them impervious to us getting through to them a lot of times. And that frustration and anger and unfairness and confusion, it builds and builds in us. And all we have to lash out on is each other as activists as a result. So this is an invitation to, yes, share what you might do differently if you were in certain situations, kindly and respectfully, but to stop lashing out at other activists, bringing other activists down, saying activists are the reason people don't go vegan, because the reality always, no matter how much you think an activist should make this little adjustment here and this little adjustment here, I have plenty of thoughts like that myself. No matter what though, at the end of the day, the reason the person is not going vegan is solely and exclusively on them, not on the activist. Not on the activist not using the perfect enough words, not on the activist using the perfect enough method. Let's stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated and gaslighted by people who refuse to go vegan and the direct perpetrators of the unnecessary violence into lashing out at each other or into not speaking up at all. They are playing us. Make no mistake about it. Never forget that every person at every time has the ability to take 5 seconds to go on the internet and educate themselves about the standard industry practices, watch a 5-minute video like Darius Scary, or watch the documentary Dominion. If they have any level of willingness to go vegan, they will do that no matter what an activist does or does not do. I also invite you to stop spending so much time being obsessive about dissecting the imperfections of other activists and every little tiny detail about it, and stop getting hung up on semantics and philosophical word jumble and religious word jumble, and just, it's like, I research trauma and trauma healing a lot, and something that comes up time and time again is the victim thinking, if I could just get through to them, if I could just say the right thing, my parent will stop abusing me, etc., etc. That's basically what we're doing in this situation. It's not real. That's not real. You can't rationalize irrational people. You can't force empathy onto people who refuse to have empathy or are incapable of it. To expand on that, a lot of us do have the trauma trigger of building cases and gathering evidence and just driving ourselves insane, obsessing on gathering and providing all the evidence in the whole world to present to the person to try to get through to them. You know, a lot of us activists think we have to have all the talking points, all the studies, all the this, all of that, and we drive ourselves a little bit crazy. At the end of the day, you know, saying, watch Dominion, here's a couple of facts about standard industry practices, here's a couple corrections of common misconceptions, that is actually enough, you know, and maybe just a little bit of like, here's some scientific evidence proving we don't need animal products. That's pretty much like, at the end of the day, all we actually need to present to the world. Everything else is kind of just nonsense. When it comes to monitoring the actions of other vegans / other animal rights activists, our only responsibility is to hold people accountable when they're doing something that's not vegan, like riding horses, for example, or when they're doing something that's harming humans or animals. Let's show each other the love and respect that we deserve and channel that very valid anger and frustration into doing our own activism in the method that we are convinced is the best. Obviously, as long as it does not hurt others. I have plenty of things that I would say if I was on Piers Morgan or if I was debating someone with a big following. I have plenty of my own thoughts on it, but yet I cannot imagine doing all the work that leads up to an opportunity like that and then doing it, and then instead of receiving love and support from the activist community, being shit all over, being told that I lost the debate or whatever, or being misblamed for people not going vegan as a result of viewing or watching the thing, or being told that I've somehow made it worse for the animals. And where is there any sense in saying that the person advocating for nonviolence is the one who lost. What kind of game is being played here? And by the way, these quote-unquote debates, they shouldn't even be called debates. Human rights are not up for debate, so animal rights shouldn't be up for debate either. You know, we should really just call them public appearances to spread the factual information and advocate. There is no winning or losing these debates. That's ego talk. We have to keep the ego out of activism. It's not about being right. It's about telling people that there is a way to choose to not contribute to unnecessary violence and to be nonviolent instead, and to tell them the truth about what is happening in the meat, dairy, and egg industries. I would really like to see the movement stick with that and stay away from the ego fighting and the ego triggers and all of that. But I actually want to expand on ego because I've been meaning to. I believe ego is the #1 reason people don't go vegan. Let me explain what I see ego as. It's hard to put into words, and it's a lot of things, and you don't even need to be spiritual to grasp the concept, but ego is basically being in survival mode, being triggered so that the blood does not flow to the prefrontal cortex of your brain, which is responsible for rational thought. Ego is basically like the colonizers who raped and pillaged and took over. Ego is having a scarcity mindset and things never being enough and just being ruthlessly violent, and that's my toaster. Ego is also like winning the competition at all costs, proving that you're better than others, not caring who you have to hurt to get to the top. And basically, if we were to be like, what kind of societal system is a metaphor for ego, it would be capitalism. Meaning, think of the behaviors and actions that are rewarded and incentivized within the capitalism system. Ego is the thing that makes people not able to ever, or willing to ever admit that they're wrong, to make positive change. Ego is the thing that makes people double down on what they're doing. Ego is basically the thing where when you get triggered and you're being confronted about something wrong you're doing, you'll double down about it at all costs. You'll do any kind of mental gymnastics to defend yourself about it and why it's okay for you to keep doing it. And you'll act and do and say things that you normally would think are insane if you weren't currently in a triggered state. That's why you sometimes hear people saying that they would have no problem eating dogs, killing and eating their own dog, or that picking an apple is equatable to child abduction. Ego is also like domination and control, so people having a lack of power from within and taking it out on, taking the power away from the vulnerable, such as animals or children. And a big cause of people unable to get out of their ego is having trauma, and trauma also takes away people's ability to have empathy, and it also makes you get ego triggered a lot more often, to where you get triggered and you can't be rational and you lose control of your actions and stuff like that. It's not to make an excuse, but these are things we have to kind of understand. It's a lot that we're up against. And another huge thing I almost forgot, ego is also programming. It's societal norms and what we're taught and our bias towards what we hear first as far as information regarding a topic. Our ego will latch onto that no matter the amount of evidence that goes against it. So that's also an ego thing. Programming very much does include all of the little things that advertisers of companies like animal agriculture companies will put in advertisements that go into your subconscious and form your beliefs from the age of being a young child. I've heard from a few people recently, they don't think ego is the main cause of people not being vegan. They think it's social pressure, and I believe that's part of ego too, because ego is kind of like survival mode, and back in the caveman days, if we got kicked out of the tribe, we fucking died. So that's why it feels like death for your family to not accept you and go against you and exile you out of the family for being vegan and stuff like that. It's a very viscerally felt fear from our, DNA basically, but it's nothing that can't be overcome with mindfulness and higher, just consciousness. When it comes to us as animal rights activists, of course, ego exists because it's a group of humans, and, most humans are not living extremely consciously or mindfully, so there's going to be ego involved. So that can look like becoming vegan, quote unquote, to gain a vegan following and make money off of them. That can look like tearing down other animal rights activists so you get all the attention. That can look like doing it for the purpose of getting praise for what you're doing. A lot of people will look at the animal rights movement, or vegans will look at the movement they're in, and they'll come to the conclusion that veganism is what makes people crazy and fight each other and do the infighting, or that it's a vegan thing, quote unquote. But in reality, it's just a group of humans thing. It's a group of humans with egos thing. It's not because of veganism. Another point is that a lot of the general public and also like spiritual people will say that being vegan is quote unquote an identity, which makes no sense, because if not going and killing my neighbor right now isn't an identity, then neither should being vegan. People who are, I'll just say plant-based, but quote unquote vegan for their ego do exist, but that doesn't mean being vegan in and of itself is automatically an ego thing. But, a lot of people try and think that it is. It's kind of just intellectually lazy. Another point, we gotta be aware of what I call egotivism, which is where your activism and your actions and your interactions with people are driven more by revenge towards people or like something personal against the person instead of motivated by spreading truth for the animals. That is very, very easy to get sucked into. This is exactly the thing that keeps you distracted all day long, going back and forth in a toxic comment interaction, or just wasting all your time and energy on people who are, once again, incapable of being rational or having empathy. It's never really productive. I think in a lot of cases where the person isn't just like born fucking evil like Kim Jong-un or something, ego stuff is actually quite rooted in trauma. And so it's just all the more reason that as activists, it would only help if we all did some research on understanding narcissistic abuse. I mean, the tactics of those harming animals are the same tactics that narcissistic abusers use, as well as researching about trauma, how it works, how trauma triggers work in the brain and all of that stuff. So really, we're up against those tactics, we're up against ego and trauma and all the things that cause people to be like narcissistic abusers in the first place. So it's a lot. But I do believe nearly everyone is capable of making that change. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of reasoning and just the awakening of being told the truth. And sometimes, unfortunately, it takes more of a bigger life awakening in general. But the more that we spread the truth about what happens to animals far and wide, and the truth about trauma and healing far and wide, and the truth about abuse far and wide, the more we get closer to more people waking up and making that positive change. Lastly, show yourself the love and self-care that you deserve and are worthy of and that you need. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and the whole corruption and violence of the entire world is not solely on your own shoulders. It's easy to feel that way, but it's not. When you get discouraged or hopeless, take a break, maybe reevaluate, and make changes to how you do activism, and then come back. Have a beautiful, happy, peaceful day in life. Bye!